Everything's good.
Okay.
Cool beans.
All right. Welcome to Triple Feature, a podcast for Cinephiles. My name is Emma.
I'm Freddy.
And I'm Sea Bear.
All right. So we come to you with a premiere of our podcast. We got three friends who live in two different cities. Freddy and I live in Detroit, and Connor is all the way over in Chicago.
City.
Yeah. Chi-Town. D-Town and Chi-Town. Yeah. So, yeah, we are coming together, and we talk about movies with each other over text message sometimes, and we decided that it needed to be something that we share with other people. So that's what we are doing. Connor, will you get into what we're going to be doing on Triple Feature and why it's called Triple Feature?
Yeah, so Triple Feature was something that I thought of to basically bring everything together of how we're three friends, and each month there will be a theme that we go over, and each person will bring a movie based on the theme, and in the end we'll decide if it makes a good triple feature. There's been a double feature, but I don't really see people talk about triple features. And with the months, it could be things like for instance, we're probably going to be doing Spooky Month for October, and then there could be Christmas, or it could also be something like DC Month, or DC Comics Month. And the theme of it is just trying to find different themes and things in those months and the movies that we pick to see if it does make for a pretty good back-to-back marathon of a triple feature of everything that's going on.
Right, so there are three of us. Therefore, there will be three movies each month where each one of us picks a film to discuss each week. We won't be discussing a specific film this week.
And so with that, like pretty much of just like any movie can go as long as it fits the theme. There could be some wild cards of movies of just either barely making it into the theme or just something where like you might not think that it works, but it technically does if the person has a good argument for it. And so, yeah, it should be a lot of fun hearing about movies and hopefully expanding our broad strokes of movies and everything.
Very good. As well, there are 4 weeks in a month. So there will be kind of like a odd month out. And that month we will be using to not just kind of talk about the three films together and if they make a good triple feature or how the themes connect with each other, but also talk about new releases. So Freddy's going to talk about that.
So for the last podcast of the month where we're kind of overviewing our choices and how good of a triple feature they make, we'll be talking about one movie specifically that has recently come out, and that'll kind of be I guess like that's where we can fit our extra takes outside of the actual theme for the month. Talk about topics that are more relevant to like the current world of film. I guess what sort of trends we see, what movies we like, what directors we like that we see putting out movies recently.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. So I hope you are interested in listening to us talk about movies. To get to know us a little bit better, I think we are going to share with you a little bit about our taste in film, because while the three of us do talk about movies a lot, we have similar tastes, but we also don't have similar tastes. So we're each going to talk about our letterboxd 4 favorites. If you don't know anything about letterboxd, it is basically a social media kind of like Goodreads for movies, except it's way better than Goodreads. And it's a place where you can log the movies that you watch, and you can make, write reviews, and you can make lists, and you can like other people's reviews. But a feature of Letterboxd is everybody's profile has their 4 favorite films, and it's kind of become a trend. I think if you listen to the Letterboxd podcast, they have guests on to talk about their 4 favorites. And so that's what we're going to be doing a little bit today, so you can get to know our taste a little bit. But I think everybody uses their 4 favorites differently. So, Connor, tell us how you use your 4 favorites.
Yeah, on Letterboxd, I love to use it. I love to see the number go up every time I log in a movie. But with the 4 favorites, I normally, when I first started, I actually put my actual top 4 favorites. And then after a while, I just started to champion underdog movies, in my opinion, that don't get as much love or favorites that I also love and everything. And so I try to switch those in, but then sometimes on certain months, like in October, I switch it up to just horror movies, or around December, just Christmas movies. And it's just trying to show, when people see my account, like what movies I do love, because it is hard to just narrow it down to 4 films.
Yes. Freddy, how do you use your 4 favorites?
So my 4 favorites on Letterboxd are usually, it's kind of like an all-time thing for me. So I pick it really doesn't change that much. It's changed very recently, but that's because I saw a movie that I was like, well, I think this is going to be top 4.
Okay.
But in general, it's my top 4 all time.
Okay. So as far as I go, my 4 favorites do kind of shift sometimes. I don't use it as an all-time because I think that's too hard. I use it as a way to kind of profile myself as a cinephile, and it kind of tells a story of not just my taste, but like, how old I am and where I came from, and those kinds of things. And so sometimes I do switch it up. I think at the end of the year, around Oscar season, I will use my 4 favorites to profile my top 4 from the previous year, because I do like to keep up with new releases. But right now, it's more just like a profile of kind of like who I am. So what we're going to do now is talk about our 4 favorites. We're going to go one at a time, starting with Connor. What is your first 4 favorite? My
first favorite film is not a shock to people that know me, and it is Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
I love this movie. It is a movie that came to me at the right point in my life, and it is just my whole personality. Most people know that. It's my number 1 movie because it's probably the most movie I've seen the most times. I love it, and I can't get enough of it. It's great. It's, in my mind, the perfect movie.
Yeah. And I know we're all really excited for the Scott Pilgrim animated series. With the original cast coming back. We're very excited about that. I know Freddie and I are both also big fans of Scott Pilgrim.
Yes, I'm sure that's going to be talked about on this podcast. I'm sure we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, we're going to have a Scott Pilgrim episode.
Oh yeah, I think it most likely will, just because I will just make it be talked about. I am super excited for it, only because of the fact that it is Brian Lee O'Malley, co-wrote it with another screenwriter, Ben Davis, and they are basically just doing the actual book run. So I'm hoping that we actually get more of we actually get to see more of the expanded parts of Scott Pilgrim, but also tackled the complaints that the people have with the movie, which is how fast the movie goes, because it's a movie, versus now we actually get 6 episodes or so to actually see Scott grow as a person. And so yeah, it should be great.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I am a former educator. I used to teach film study to high schoolers, and I showed Scott Pilgrim versus the World in that class. And for the most part, they love it. But the big complaint that I hear is it's too fast-paced. It's hard to keep track of, and it's one of those things that just takes a rewatch. So we're gonna spend some more time talking about that when we get an episode, I think.
Oh, it'll probably, well, let's just say it'll get an episode.
All right, all right, Freddy.
Knowing me,
your first of your 4 faves.
Okay, so my first of my 4 favorites on Letterboxd is The Iron Giant.
Oh my god!
And
as you can tell, we really like movies.
Yeah. So for me, I picked The Iron Giant because I guess a couple of reasons. The first one is it was my favorite movie when I was a kid, and I feel like it has shaped me in a way. Legitimately. So it had a very big impact on me. I think it's a great movie that's geared towards kids but doesn't treat kids like kids. It addresses some pretty heavy emotions, and it's wholesome. It's so great. It's Brad Bird
oh yeah,
just peaking. It's funny. I cry every time.
It makes you cry like a baby.
Yeah, I cry so much.
If you don't cry at the end of Iron Giant, I don't think
it's
we
super,
trust you.
Yeah, I love the Iron Giant as well.
It's suspicious.
I don't know if y'all watched Ted Lasso. I watched Ted Lasso, and he makes the soccer team watch that movie. And of course, at the end, they're all just bawling. these $1 million athletes are just in puddles, and it's just yeah, that's what that movie is.
Yeah, that's what it does. It's so good.
Yeah. All right, I will go now with my first of my 4 faves. So this first film is probably an all-time for me. It's probably the number 1 movie for me. It is Damien Chazelle's Whiplash. That is my number 1 film on my 4 favorites, and it's on there because I feel like it does kind of just tell. It's the first one. It tells something about me, which is just that is peak cinema to me. The way that it's crafted and the way that it's written and the performances make the first time I watched Whiplash, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. It is incredibly engaging and captivating, and I just think that's a testament to the filmmaker as Damien Chazelle's first film, which he later went on to make La La Land and Babylon, which I love, and of course First Man. But yeah,
don't never forget that movie.
Yeah, but Whiplash is just incredible. And I don't, I watched it in 2014 when it came out, and I don't think I've seen a better movie since. So it's kind of the standard that I kind of compare other movies to, especially movies with that genre, a thriller, high octane drama. So yeah, that's my first on my 4 faves.
Yes,
Whiplash is
Chazelle. Yeah.
Oh, you gonna say something? Okay, I was gonna say Whiplash. Whiplash is, I think it is a modern classic for sure. Mm-hmm. It's come out. Even people that don't aren't really obsessed with Whiplash I mean, how are you supposed to look at Whiplash and say that it's just a bad movie?
Yeah,
Like,
you can't.
It's like so well crafted. I mean, even if you don't like the story, it's like it's just impressive.
It's very impressive.
Like,
yeah.
But it's so good. I love Whiplash.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Connor, you're up.
Yeah, just to bounce off of the Damien Chazelle love. Like Chazelle is probably like my favorite director now, like modern director.
He's
like
up
his
there for
run
me,
of
top
movies.
5.
Yeah, like his run of movies are just so good. Like with Whiplash,
He has
being
not
his
missed.
directorial debut, and then La La Land and like First Man. Like me and Freddy saw First Man in theaters, and it's awesome. And then even Babylon. Like it's like. This dude is always on my radar. Every time I hear he's making a movie, I'm like, I have
cannot wait.
So
Yes.
Yeah.
I will be seated for every Damien Chazelle movie ever because he has not missed once.
Yeah.
Come at me.
But for my second movie, I have Christopher Nolan's The Prestige. The Prestige is what I would describe as the movie that made me love movies. It is a movie that my dad rented from probably Blockbuster at the time. And I remember us watching it because as a kid, I love magic. I still love magic. I love magicians. I love magic shows. Like it blows my mind every time when they do tricks. And to have a movie that is all about that, and the movie is pretty much a magic trick, was insane. And the ending and twist ending that happens, I remember looking to my dad and saying, how much time do we have to rent this? And he said, the rest of the week. And I watched it probably 4 times in that time because I wanted to understand and like really know like what Nolan was doing with the camera and just like everything and get the twist, like to see like the hints and everything before. And it's just a masterful piece of work in my mind of just, like it's what made me become a cinephile and made me go, oh, movies can be like extraordinary.
Yeah. I just want to add, like, I think Christopher Nolan is like the best director for like baby cinephiles because I felt the same. Like when you were talking about, watching The Prestige when you were younger, like that's exactly how I was introduced to Christopher Nolan. And to this day, The Prestige is my second favorite Christopher Nolan film. I think it is so well made to this day. So I agree with you. I think that I still like Christopher Nolan a lot. I don't want to discredit anybody who Christopher Nolan is their favorite filmmaker, but I do think that like, we all kind of like have, he's great because he introduced a lot of people to like actual cinema and not just like, these blockbuster. He made the blockbuster movies look really good. And I think that he made a lot of people interested in looking at other things. And so I think that's why I say like he's a great person for baby cinephiles.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. It's like
I agree.
It's like an introduction to thinking about movies more than just this is the story that was presented to me and I don't care about like how it was presented or how it looks. It's just like, oh, when I talk about movies, I just straight up say like the plot outright. I think Christopher Nolan's a good
there's a deeper
director for like getting people to be like, oh, there's like a whole language to this outside of just what this story is.
Yeah. So that's a good Christopher Nolan pick. I love it.
So for me, my second of my top 4 on Letterboxd is here it comes.
Oh no,
Speed Racer.
Speed Racer.
Racer.
There it is.
Oh, let's go.
It's all
Go
about
Speed, go.
Racer. If
More like a ninja.
more like a ninja. So Speed Racer is like the Iron Giant and Speed Racer are admittedly like pretty back and forth as my number 1 movie. I just adore Speed Racer. I mean, there's like no other way to put it. I think it is one of the most visually creative movies I've seen. The Wachowskis took like every single convention for visual storytelling and just were like, fuck it. We're going to do whatever we want. and it is the best. It's the best live action anime. Don't at me, because it is. It's the style is concise. The story is super anti-capitalist. It's a gem. It's a gem. And it's super underrated. It came out, everybody thought it was weird, and they're like, "Oh, this is gross.
It was ahead of its time.
I don't like it." And then, like 3 years later, that was the style that people thought was really cool. So,
yeah,
go watch
The Wachowskis are always the Wachowskis are always like ahead of the curve.
Yeah,
definitely. I didn't even know about this movie until I was teaching The Matrix in my film study class, and I was going through, because in my studies I like to talk about the directors and I like to talk about their other work, and so that's when I first realized that they had directed Speed Racer, and I still hadn't watched it until this year. I watched it with Freddy and our partners Cameron and Faith, and we had a little movie night. Fun fact, Freddy and I are neighbors. And so we had a little movie night, and I watched it for the first time, and I was blown away by the visuals. It was some of the most creative shots and action sequences that I've ever seen. It was just honestly a lot of fun. It was so fun. I really had a good time.
It is the fastest 2.5 hour movie you'll ever watch.
Oh yeah,
2.5 hours seems like a lot, and then all of a sudden you're at the end of the movie and you're like, "What happened? What? when did we get 2 hours into this movie? I thought we were like 45 minutes in."
Right.
It's great. It's got varied, like it's like a sports movie kind of. It's a fictional sport movie. It's like this crazy auto
It follows
sport.
the sports movie like formula.
Yeah. So it has like there's like, you have like your 3 main races, and each one has a different purpose and style. Like your first race is your introduction to all the characters, and it has a bunch of like quintessential anime backstory, like ellipses. And then you have your middle race, which is like a completely different type of race, but it's also the rebellious phase. And then you have your final race, which is like the championship.
Yeah. You gotta have like the build up to like.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta have.
Yeah, it's the underdog.
Yeah.
It's the underdog story.
It's the underdog
like Rudy,
story, 100%.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just cool. It's way cooler than Rudy.
It's badass. That's Speed Racer.
Yeah, it just honestly, like, I always give the example of Speed Racer when I have this film idea. Warner Brothers, if you're listening, you're wasting your time of doing a movie where it's Quidditch for Harry Potter, but it's a like realistic sports movie.
Yeah.
It can still be set in the universe, but like make a sports movie, but just Quidditch. And I also said the same thing about Star Wars with pod racing. Like imagine Speed Racer, but it's pod racing for Star Wars.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with like any of the other characters and stuff, but it's still in that universe. Because like you have this huge expansive universe and you're just not doing anything with it. Especially those like gimmies that would be cool if you have a director that's like a Noah Baumbach that made Gran Turismo is like, yo, I can make a cool sports movie.
Right.
Like what are we doing here?
So what we're getting is Connor said, stop making Fantastic Beasts movies, please. And make a Quidditch sports movie.
Make a Quidditch sports movie.
Yeah.
Let's make it happen. There is like lore in the Harry Potter novels about the longest Quidditch game ever.
Yeah.
Which was like 400 days or something. Let's get that on a movie, please.
The 400-day Quidditch
Or just
game.
like
400-day Quidditch game.
What movie was it where like you actually see like the Quidditch like World Cup or whatever?
Yeah, that's
like,
the Goblet of
that's
Fire.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
like,
and it was fun.
Yeah, like
that's why the Goblet of Fire is the best Harry Potter movie. That's what
like
makes that one for sure.
Yeah, because like most of the Harry Potter movies, it's like they want to go to the school because they want to be wizards. But what if it was like actually college where you have kids that are just going for Quidditch?
No, like the whole Triwizard tournament is like one of the best stories, and that's what makes the Goblet of Fire the best Harry Potter movie, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, It's really Prisoner of Azkaban, but we don't need to get into it. Is it my turn?
Yes.
Okay. My second letterboxd 4 favorites is in line with Freddy's Iron Giant pick, which is a childhood movie, not necessarily coming out when I was a child, but it's something that I watched as a child over and over and over and over and over again. It's literally made for me because I am a dog lover. I love dogs a lot. And it is something that I continuously watch every year around Christmas time. And it is my favorite animated film, and it is my favorite Disney movie. It is 101 Dalmatians. That is my favorite Disney film, my favorite animated film, and I still watch it to this day around Christmas time because there is like this holiday aspect to it, and it just warms my heart. The puppies are just cute. They're cute as shit. They're so cute. I will just like quote these little quips that they have, like, hee hee, we're gonna fool the old mad lady, because Cruella, she's the best villain ever. And I often watch this as a child with my family, and so we kind of like talk about these things. We kind of like quote these lines often with each other, so it's kind of just something that has stuck with me. And I think it kind of tells you a little bit about, like, not my childhood, because I wasn't born in the 60s, but but it's something that, like, it was my Alice in Wonderland, or it was my, Sleeping Beauty, or whatever, those old classics. That's my favorite Disney classic. So I don't know if y'all have seen it.
Everyone had the VHS tapes. Out our parents, everyone had the classic reissued of every Disney movie ever.
Yeah.
Because I had 101 Dalmatians. I had all of them. All the princess movies and stuff. So yes.
And then when I was a child, the Glenn Close live action version came out, and I was also pretty obsessed with that.
Oh,
yeah.
It was really good.
See, now we're talking. Now that's the one that I
now that's what I call Kino.
It's
that's the one I remember
remake.
watching a lot. I had that VHS a lot too. And then I think 102 Dalmatians.
Oh yes, I also saw that with the little spotless dog. Yes, I watched all of those. Like I said, my favorite Disney franchise ever is 101 Dalmatians. I used to have a Dalmatian collection when I was a kid. Like, I had, my bedspread was Dalmatians. I had pillows. I had a little like set of cars that were like Dalmatian print.
Did you watch the new series on Disney Channel?
The series?
Yeah, so like Disney always once in a while, brings back something and things, or they take a franchise that should get another movie or something and turn it into a series, i.e. Big Hero 6. Where's the movie? Yeah. But I digress with that. They did come out I think 4 years ago or something. It's still probably on it might be on Disney Plus now, but there was a new show of 101 Dalmatians. Oh,
I need to pick that up, because I mean I'm not really I'm not shilling for Disney, so
yeah, it's called 101 Dalmatian Street.
Oh, okay. I watched all of those when I was little. I used to watch all of those straight to VHS, Scout's Big Adventure. It was it was an obsession of mine. So yeah, that might be something I need to revisit.
Yeah, also the Cruella movie with Emma Stone. I did love the Emma Stone
Cruella movie. I thought it was great, because Cruella is the most interesting, I think, Disney villain. She's not only is she a woman, which was very rare, but she was super fashionable, and she was this kind of glam villain. Yeah. And the smoke, and she just was cool, but you also really love to hate her.
Yeah, true.
So,
but I think that makes
you don't
a good
like
one.
people. You don't want to like people that wants to kill puppies.
Yeah,
that's the worst person alive.
Now for Now for my third pick,
Yes.
third favorite. My
we
third
go.
favorite is also not a shock to most people that know me. It is Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight.
Wow. You're telling me you have
The
two
Dark-
Christopher Nolan in your 4 faves?
Listen,
He's the Christopher
these
Nolan
top-
fan we were talking about.
Well, these top 4s are basically like what makes me me.
Yeah.
Like anybody, because like with Scott Pilgrim, like it is my whole personality. The Prestige is what made me get into movies, and now The Dark Knight is like, the Batman is my favorite superhero, and Batman has just always been a part of my life. And when The Dark Knight came out, it just took over like everything about me. Like, I love this movie. It was the first movie I bought on iTunes for my iPod, like, and the only movie for the longest time. It is a movie that I constantly rewatch. I can't get enough of it. The performances, everything. It is quintessential Batman for me. And yeah, and then being in Chicago, where we have Gurnee, which is where Six Flags is, like, there is the Dark Knight ride. Most people that have gone there know that ride sucks, but I love it because it's the Dark Knight. And they also got Aaron Eckhart to do a pre-show for it, and it's the first time that like Six Flags like has tried to like combat Disney like that, where like they actually have like a pre-show and like a real like story behind the ride, and it's so good. Like, everything about The Dark Knight is so good, and every time I watch it and every time I learn more about it, I just love it even more. Like, yeah, it's great.
The Dark Knight is great. It is definitely was an obsession of mine for a long time also. But to your Batman point, I love the Dark Knight trilogy, but I am truly, Christopher Nolan made a mistake, I think, because he cast Christian Bale as Batman. And Christian Bale is fine, and I think he's awesome. But he also cast Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow, Heath Ledger as the Joker, and Tom Hardy as Bane. And it's hard to cheer. It's hard to root for Bruce Wayne and Batman when he is opposite Cillian Murphy.
Oh, okay.
Heath Ledger
and
Tom Hardy.
Yeah, no,
because
I agree.
because
Well,
I am
Scarecrow to
pro
me, I
Scarecrow,
didn't
pro
think
Joker,
was-
and pro Bane.
Yeah, like Joker is probably the best like villain. Well,
It makes
Joker
me
and
very
Two-Face.
anti-Batman.
Yeah.
I do think the Dark Knight with Two-Face is amazing, like what they did, because pretty much the Dark Knight is their take on the Long Halloween comic storyline, which is also a very good comic.
I know, I read it.
And
I owned it,
yeah,
actually. It's crazy.
but I thought you were gonna say his biggest mistake was casting Katie Holmes.
Oh no,
Batman Begins.
I don't think about it. That's not something that.
And I also think it's Katie
think
Holmes'
about
big mistake. I think it's Katie Holmes' big mistake for not doing The Dark Knight, because she was like, I'm going to do this other movie called Money Heist with Queen Latifah.
Yeah.
And who's laughing now in the bank of just like how much money those
Maggie
movies
Gyllenhaal is laughing now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think The Dark Knight is I think The Dark Knight is like a watershed moment for superhero movies, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty well discussed, but just like in general, like it's a movie.
Well, it's crazy.
It's a superhero movie directed by a really competent film director, and like taking it on from that perspective, not just being like, well, I'm making a superhero movie, this can be super kitschy, I'm kind of like whatever about it.
Yeah.
It was like, no, I want this to be a very serious movie. Like I want this to be looked at as like a film more than just like
It's almost
a
like
comic movie.
It's almost like noir in a way.
Yeah.
Like it's very competent. But like I do think The Dark Knight did for superhero films going forward what maybe The Matrix did for sci-fi action going forward in the 21st century. And I just don't think that besides maybe the Batman from 2022, has like really captured that tone that Christopher Nolan was able to kind of hone in The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's done it.
The Dark Knight is definitely a moment, but the craziest part is that The Dark Knight was was one of the second biggest superhero movies that year. Because also that year, 2008, was Iron Man.
Yeah.
And Iron Man is also another blueprint of the modern superhero movie, starting the MCU and what we now know is superhero movies. Like, if it wasn't for both of those movies, like, we wouldn't get certain movies that we love or hate and stuff. Like they are to blame for what has happened these past, decades, but it is also like they are to praise for, like you said, like with the Batman and stuff, like how we get things like that where it's director focused first.
Yeah. And I think that the really bad superhero movies that come out are not, I don't think we should blame The Dark Knight for something like that. I think we should just blame people who are interested in profit over, quality, and not focusing on a director, a specific filmmaker, just focusing on, let's just churn out this new thing like over and over again. So
the bad ones, I just point to Iron Man. That's
exactly
what I was trying to say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Who's next?
Me, I believe. So, my third pick is Powwow Highway. Deep cut.
Deep cut, here we go.
So, Powwow Highway is really one of the first, if not the first, movie made by Native Americans for Native Americans. It's a classic within the communities. Smoke Signals is more popular. However, you don't get Smoke Signals without Powwow Highway. I think for that reason alone, it deserves to be talked about and remembered. Like, you don't see a lot of indigenous cinema. It's growing more, but like, this is where it started, and it starts out so well. Powwow Highway is a great movie. It's a road trip movie, but it's just got, there's a lot of elements of that movie that, if you know the history, they have like a lot more significance. If you don't know, it might just come off as like a pretty generic road trip movie, but it's special. It's special.
Okay, I have never seen Powwow Highway.
Neither have I.
I'm looking at Letterboxd right now. I think this is probably one of the more obscure picks. So for our audience, I just wanted to kind of go through a synopsis. 2 Northern Cheyenne men take a road trip from Montana to New Mexico to bail out the sister of one of them, who has been framed and arrested in Santa Fe. On the way, they begin to reconnect to their spiritual heritage. It has a 3.5 rating on Letterboxd, which is pretty good. So I'm adding it to the watch list.
It's so good. It is. You can watch it on the Criterion channel. That's probably the only place you can actually watch it. Powwow Highway is really hard to come by, I will say that.
Do you have the physical copy?
That is the only place to watch it.
There isn't really. You can find physical copies, but you're looking for like eBay postings that are like $50 for a DVD.
Wow.
It was printed like one time officially.
Bummer.
So, but that's just the reality.
I wish I could
of
speak a little bit
native
more
cinema.
to that, but I haven't seen it.
It's I think with more indigenous directors getting bigger releases,
mm-hmm.
I think we'll start to see like a more of an appreciation for like this, like indigenous cinema circle. But
and maybe
Powwow
like
Highway,
a reprint.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. It's great. It's got a lot of like really poignant dialogues in it. Like the very beginning of the movie is like a big oil tycoon trying to like pitch a pipeline to the reservation, and then like one of the main characters walks into this meeting and is just like, so he says something along the lines of like all you've done is take all of our land, and now you're trying to convince us that it's going to be better if we sell you the rest of it. So it's like full of it's fantastic, and it's 1989. Like,
Yeah. All right, I'm excited about it. I just finished reading Killers of the Flower Moon, and man, I mean, if you've never read it, there's a movie coming out this fall directed by Martin Scorsese. It is a tough story to tell, so I am interested to see how he kind of runs with it. But yeah, man,
interesting.
We need more native stories, indigenous stories from indigenous people. So, coming from Martin Scorsese, it's like, yeah, that's cool. That's probably the most prolific filmmaker of all time. But it would be nice if we could, hear from.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
the subject.
It's like the color purple conversation.
Yeah,
of,
exactly.
Steven Spielberg doing
Why
the
is
color
Steven
purple,
Spielberg doing
and
the
everyone
color
was
purple?
like,
yeah.
Yeah, it's like should Steven Spielberg do that? And it's a good movie because it's Steven Spielberg. But then that's why I think they're remaking The Color Purple with an all cast that is represented like that.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Me too. Okay, I'm gonna go next. My third favorite. Speaking of Steven Spielberg.
Ooh,
that was actually a really great segue into my third favorite, which is a Steven Spielberg film. I picked this movie for my four favorites because it's also something that I watched a lot as a child. It came out when I was a child, and it is something that I watched often on VHS. And it's also something that I have revisited a lot as an adult. I have come back to it probably more than any other Spielberg movie. I just think it's a lot of fun. It has rewatchability, and that's why it's in my top four. It is Jurassic Park.
Nice.
Oh, baby.
I love this movie so much.
Yeah.
I think it's Spielberg's best film, and that's coming from somebody who just watched Schindler's List for the first time this year, and I was blown away by it. But Jurassic Park is just so fun. It is just like, I think the word thriller is like the best word to attach to something like Jurassic Park. It is so
it's an adventure horror.
It's just a blast, and it's so funny. My letterboxd picture is actually Laura Dern in the Jeep looking at the dinosaurs for the first time.
Iconic.
And it's iconic, yeah. When Sam Neill has to like turn her head and like grabs her head, like that's that's so iconic. But yeah, like she's hilarious. Like I love Laura Dern, but like honestly, the best part of this movie is Jeff Goldblum. Like that man.
Jeff Goldblum.
Good old Jeff Goldblum.
I literally I watched this the other day, and I'm like, man, he is so good looking, and he knows it. Like he is leaning into how hot he is.
Sexy
and
Goldblum.
He had all the best lines. Like he kept, I'm gonna actually look at my.
That is one big pile of shit.
Yeah. When he says, like, when he's in the car and the T-Rex comes across the barrier for the first time, and he's like, man, I hate being right all the time. It's just so
Goldblum, but Tasha, my girlfriend, knows, and some people know, like, Goldblum is my celebrity crush. He is my hall pass, I tell people. He's just an enigma. I love the man. Like I just can't get enough of Jeff Goldblum. I love his interviews. They are so crazy. They are so wild, but that is Goldblum. And yeah, like Jurassic Park Goldblum, even like Independence Day Goldblum, like I love that Goldblum. And yeah,
the 90s
Jurassic Park
Goldblum.
Jurassic Park just also just like
Specimen.
has a banger cast too of side characters with Samuel L.
Samuel L. Jackson
and Dwayne Knight.
Samuel L. Jackson comes away with the most iconic line of Jurassic Park, which is hold on to your butts. And he's just this minor he has this minor role in this huge Spielberg movie, and he says hold on to your butts.
I say hold on to your butts on a
I say hold on to your
basis.
butts all the time.
And Wayne Knight of the, Dotson. See, nobody cares.
Steve Dotson. You didn't say the magic word.
Yeah.
You didn't say the magic word.
Yeah, Jurassic Park is what I describe as a comfort movie.
Yes.
It is a movie that I put on constantly. I have the 4K. Like, I love the movie. It is something I also watched a lot as a kid. I had the VHS from my dad. And that whole franchise is one of my favorites. And Tasha, my girlfriend, loves dinosaurs as well, too. And we both love that franchise.
Yeah. That's why it's on my top 4, because it definitely shows my adventurous side. I like to have a lot of fun when I watch movies. It's not just whiplash,
Yeah.
Alrighty. So for my 4th film, it brings everything together. It is the SpongeBob SquarePants movie.
The
SpongeBob SquarePants movie is probably my favorite animated movie. I talk about this not a lot, but just a little often, of just how the SpongeBob movie is my favorite birthday that I've ever gotten. My birthday falls around Thanksgiving, and with that, like, I have to sometimes miss my birthday parties as a kid because I have to, wait for my friends and stuff to come from family vacation and things. So it was like the first birthday that I actually got to see like a movie like roughly like on my birthday with all my friends and stuff. But other than that, like, it's just the SpongeBob movie is like I was a TV kid, and the SpongeBob like show is like my favorite show. And so it just, it brings like everything and like my whole personality like together.
I watched the SpongeBob movie one time when I was when did that movie come out? What year is that?
SpongeBob movie is, what is it?
I was
like
gonna say 4.
It has to be like when I was,
or 5.
Yeah, early 2000s, right?
2004.
Okay, yeah. So I was in middle school, probably. Definitely saw it with my friends, but I haven't revisited it since. But I used to love SpongeBob, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
what is your
like the thing about the SpongeBob movie is that like the lore of it is like it was supposed to be the season finale of SpongeBob. Steven Hilberg created SpongeBob,
right?
And then with that, he wanted to make the movie and wanted to end it from there. And Nickelodeon's like, no, you're not, because SpongeBob is our biggest moneymaker and cash cow. You are continue making SpongeBob.
Yeah.
And so after that, so it was up to season 3. So after season 3 is where people say, like, true SpongeBob heads say where the show fell off. Even though, like, Steven was still... even though Steven was still, like, a producer on season 4 forward and stuff. But, like, there definitely is somewhat of a quality drop. I don't really see it as much. I still like season 4, 5, and roughly 6. But, like, yeah, like, the first 3 seasons are, like, great. And even, like, the movie... And to me, I'm like, it just feels like... honestly, it does feel like a perfect ending to SpongeBob. In a way, even though they still keep making more, and I'll keep watching them.
Yeah. It's been a minute since I watched the SpongeBob movie, but I will say this: I constantly want to rewatch the SpongeBob movie.
Yeah.
Like, I remember
we need to have maybe like a SpongeBob episode, because it feels like we're due for a rewatch
for you guys.
I remember really liking the SpongeBob movie when I was a kid. I thought it was so
still
funny.
Funny.
It's got so many classic lines. Did you see my butt?
What would it be, fellas? Mustard or ketchup? Put that all the time. It's David Hasselhoff.
Yeah, I can't knock the SpongeBob SquarePants movie pick. That's a solid.
That's a good one. That's a very fun one.
Big
It definitely
soft spot.
contrasts like your Christopher Nolan tone with just silly, goofy SpongeBob humor. So I think it kind of rounds it out really well.
Yeah, because like
Yeah.
even like now as an adult, like it's also one of my comfort movies. I just put on like whenever I'm having a bad day and stuff, and it's just something where like even like the message of the film of like there's always like you're always a kid at heart, and it doesn't matter that you have to be a quote unquote adult.
Right.
You can always still be a kid, and it's just like it just resonates with everybody, and it's so good. And the fact that Mr. Krabs wants a Krusty Krab too, because money.
Money.
I love it.
Why'd you make a second Krusty
Money.
Krab? Money.
Right next to the original, by the way.
Yeah. So to overview, we have for Connor, we had Scott Pilgrim, The Prestige, The Dark Knight, and SpongeBob SquarePants movie.
Wow.
Honestly, that is a very fitting for who you are as a person. So,
I agree. Fun fact, everyone. Connor and I have never met.
Not in person.
Not in person.
Mm-hmm.
But Freddy and Connor are good friends from college. So
Roommates.
we were introduced in that way. Yeah.
We were
We were roommates.
oh my god.
Oh my god, they were roommates.
Vinecast, thank you. Okay. We're rerouting.
All right.
Okay, so my fourth movie in my top 4 is Satin Tango, which this is my admittedly pretentious pick, but I'm gonna roll with it.
I see.
Yeah, pushes up glasses. Have you seen? So Satin Tango is a movie that's 7.5 hours long.
Jesus.
That being said, it's not a movie it's a movie that's hard to recommend, but when I was watching it, it legitimately felt like I was watching something that was wildly different from everything I've ever seen. It would be very easy to make a 7.5 hour long movie that is really simple and ends up being overly boring because it's like, we'll just do a bunch of takes that are really long. And granted, Satin Tango is full of takes that are really long, but the thing that really struck me immediately off the bat is how heavily cinematography is used in like contexts that I haven't seen before. Because the shots are so long, you get these shots where the composition will change like 3 or 4 times over the course of a shot that's like 4 minutes long. And so you get these individual shots that are almost a whole story within themselves, where it'll start like there's a shot where it starts with 2 people arguing in an alleyway, and then it moves into a house, and then it pans through the house and then moves back out the backside of the house, and you're just looking at like pigs in mud. The movie itself is very depressing, so this is very like heavily themed for the movie, but it's just crazy to me how masterful of a filmmaker Bela Tarr is. And because his movies are so niche, whether it be Satin Tango with its length or something like The Turin Horse, which is one of his last movies that's just like really heavy, they're all very depressing. But Bela Tarr as a person is this hilarious, like, does not care at all person. He just is like, that's the movie I wanted to make. That's why it's like that. What do you want from me?
I can't say I've seen it. I can't say that I would willingly watch something that is 7.5 hours long. Maybe I would over a course of like 4 days.
Yeah.
I would prefer like a TV show version of that.
Or
but,
if you get Clockwork Orange.
It's yeah.
Just Freddy.
Like your eyelids are just like peeled open.
Yeah.
Make it stop.
Make it. Yeah, I would.
Why are you putting Beethoven?
Yeah. So I appreciate prestige filmmaking like that. So I can't say I would put it on my watch list or I would want to have a triple feature episode with that movie. But like,
I mean, that movie is a triple feature.
Exactly.
Just be a one-off
that would just be like the whole month of like, we're going to be in the middle of like winter and we're going to be depressed and we're just be like, all right, the first 2 hours of Satin Tango this week.
Yeah.
Second 2 hours.
It's one of those things where, because it is so vastly different than any other movie that I've seen, and it's executed as well as it is, it's just like a different beast entirely when you finish watching it. Like you feel a connection to these characters that you've like sat and watched for hours on end.
You basically
just
got
like,
to know them. Yeah,
have their lives slowly unravel. So it's unlike anything I've ever seen. That's why it's on my top 4.
Very good. Okay, I'm gonna round out the picks. Actually, let's review your 4.
Yep. So I did The Iron Giant, Speed Racer, Powwow Highway, and Satin Tango.
Very good. All right. So I'm going to share my last 4 favorite film. This 4th film, I like to kind of interchange it with certain filmmakers that I want to highlight. So sometimes it's Greta Gerwig, and sometimes it's Christopher Nolan, or sometimes it's Paul Thomas Anderson, and sometimes it's whoever I'm feeling that day. But one of my favorite directors ever is Wes Anderson. I haven't decided if he's my favorite. I like to, I don't like to choose who my favorite filmmaker is, but he's up there. And so my 4th is what I say to be is Wes Anderson's best film, which is The Grand Budapest Hotel.
Okay.
It is fun, but it's also impeccably filmed with what sets Anderson apart for me is his set design and his practical effects and his just complete defiance of using any CGI whatsoever. And just to reiterate, like a lot of Wes Anderson's films can be very visually oriented, but I think what makes The Grand Budapest Hotel so amazing is it's both the visual and the narrative that come together perfectly. And it's a great story, and the performances are incredible. Ralph Fiennes, who you may know as like Voldemort, plays this. I mean, his character is hilarious, but also so poignant, and he has like these emotional touches that are so great. So yeah, I really like Wes Anderson a lot. I think we're going to talk about him a little bit more today, but I wanted to showcase him as one of my favorite filmmakers in my top 4. And I think, Freddie, you recently watched Grand Budapest Hotel, right?
I did, yeah. So before Asteroid City came out, I was on a mission to catch up on Wes Anderson movies, because I was severely lacking. There's like a very big blind spot. So one of the movies that I watched before that was The Grand Budapest Hotel, and I really enjoyed it. I think my favorite 2 of the ones that I watched, I didn't watch all of them, so don't hate me if I don't pick yours. But my favorite 2 are probably The Grand Budapest Hotel and The Darjeeling Limited.
The Darjeeling is my second favorite Wes Anderson. I love that film.
And I feel like it doesn't get talked about as much, but I did genuinely, I really enjoyed that movie.
Yeah, it doesn't.
But the Grand Budapest Hotel, I do understand why people say that this is like the quintessential Wes Anderson movie.
Yeah.
Like it seems like a lot of like the mainstays and things that people talk about with Wes Anderson are in the Grand Budapest Hotel.
Yeah.
And like you kind of see that in like all of the movies he's put out past the Grand Budapest Hotel, besides like the Darjeeling Limited. I would say that's probably like his biggest like step away from a lot of like the typical like Wes Anderson tropes. But it's so well done. It's really funny. And the thing that really surprises me with Wes Anderson that I really appreciate is he does have a lot of his visual flair, and that's like the one thing people talk about. But I think that flair mixed with his ability to like blindside you with really powerful like emotional moments.
Writing is so good.
That's like what really brings it all together.
Yeah.
Like that's what makes it feel real.
Yeah.
It's like this dollhouse effect, and then it's like, oh no, like I'm going to crush you into pieces. Actually,
Yeah.
He has an uncanny ability to kind of trick you into crying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
For sure.
Grand Budapest Hotel was another like the Prestige. Like when I first saw it, when I missed it in theaters, I remember seeing it on DVD. I was like, oh, this is like oh my god, movies can be like this. Like, oh my god, like this is insane. That was the first movie I saw of Wes Anderson.
It's so
and since then,
so unique and so stylish, and nobody has really been able to like replicate
but with
it.
that, it was like once when we saw Asteroid City, I just remember reading letterboxd reviews, so people that follow that, they're like, yeah, this is good, but it's no, like some of them were like, it's not Grand Budapest Hotel. And after a while, because I haven't seen it since like probably high school, I'm like, is it actually like that good? Like everyone says it's that good. Because my favorite is the Darjeeling Limited and the Royal Tenenbaums. I really like the Royal Tenenbaums and also Fantastic Mr. Fox. And so Grand Budapest has kind of been on the back burner of like rewatches. And then I just had to like rewatch it just to make sure. And I'm like, oh no, this is a masterpiece still. like
it really is. It really is a masterpiece. And I really loved Asteroid City. I like really loved it. I put it pretty high on my Wes Anderson list because I thought it was incredibly well made. It was very masterful, but it really took me for a ride. It's very complicated structurally, but then it's like, when you realize what he's doing, it really hits home. I cried a lot in Asteroid City.
Yeah.
I cheered when Jeff Goldblum showed up.
So, I mean, we don't want to spoil it for anybody, but Jeff Goldblum has a little guy role.
Has a little guy.
I like Spider-Man No Way Home. Like stood up
cutie.
When he showed up. I was like, oh my god. Yeah, like I had my own portal moment. Like the lady behind me was like, shut up, and I'm like, hey, it's Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
So to recap, my favorite four are Whiplash, 101 Dalmatians, Jurassic Park, and the Grand Budapest Hotel. So let's move on, because we've been talking a lot about movies, which is what we're going to do. We're going to take some time now to kind of talk about what we have been watching lately, what is on our watch list. And I think going forward, we'll probably start our show with our recently watched watch list discussion, but for the sake of the podcast, we really wanted to introduce ourselves to you and our taste in films before we got into this discussion. So who would like to get us started? What have we been watching lately? What do we want to watch? What are we looking forward to coming out in theaters?
I can start just because I have two recently watched movies. One of them we're going to discuss a little bit more here in a second. But the most recent movie that I watched is Tokyo Drifter. Mm-hmm. It is a Japanese Yakuza movie. It's part of the Criterion Collection. I enjoyed it. I would say it's probably like a solid like 3.5 to 4 stars, just going off the bat. It's got a lot. It's like the big thing that it has going for it is it has this visual style that's really, it's like pretty avant-garde. So it's very colorful, like very bright and colorful for this like gritty, like sort of gangster action movie. But there were definitely some parts where I found myself getting lost in like what was happening in the plot. And looking at some of the behind the scenes stuff, it seems like its significance relies a lot on like how different it was for a lot of other movies at the time, and the fact that it was very low budget as far as movies at the time go, coming from studios. So in that regard, I'll give it its props.
Cool.
I enjoyed it. But I wouldn't say that it was like... I wouldn't say that it's like a must-see unless you're like really into like Japanese
Is it a must-buy
or
from the Criterion?
Yakuza movies. I wouldn't say that it's a must-buy from the Criterion either.
Barnes
it's
and Noble.
enjoyable.
It
if
sounds
you get the
interesting.
opportunity,
A Barnes and Noble sale one?
If you get the opportunity to watch it, yeah. That's how I got it. Barnes and Noble sale. It's a nice pickup, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it's...
You gotta rush out. Okay.
It's a must-watch. But I don't regret owning it.
Okay.
For sure.
That's good.
Do you want to save your other recently watched for our other discussion?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you want to go
Sure,
next?
I guess I can go. I got a bunch of rapid fire ones to go off of.
All right.
Like I've since we've last talked, I've been in the summer, and I like horror movies, so I've watched a lot of horror movies. I watched The Burning, Sleepaway Camp, and Friday the 13th, all like slasher movies based on like a summer camp. Sleepaway Camp I did not like. The Burning I do like. It has what's his name from Seinfeld, George Costanza in it.
Costanza.
A young him in that, and he's awesome. And then the Friday the 13th, it was a interesting ride to go from a franchise like that, notorious for like being parodied of like, oh, it's just, a franchise where you just see boobs and people get killed, and surprisingly not a lot of boobs in those movies. like not a lot of teenagers having sex in those movies for being parodied so much about that. I feel like the imitators like The Burning and Sleepaway Camp and things that came out around the same time in the 80s probably like made that parody more effective. But yeah, with Friday the 13th, it was interesting. 1 is a classic, 2 is pretty good, 3 is bad because it was made for 3D. 4 was great because it has a young Corey Feldman and Chris McGlover in it. George McFly from Back to the Future fame. And then 5 is back to boring, and then 6 is a masterpiece in horror.
And what are these that you're ranking?
Friday the 13th.
What is the 1 through 6?
1 through 6. I've only seen 1 through 6, and like 6 is crazy. Like by 6 is where Jason lives. Friday the 13th, Jason lives. And it's because of the fact that every Friday the 13th, they have to kill the killer. And I say that because, not all of them revolve around Jason. But by 6, like, they just have to keep bringing back Jason, and they have to find ways of doing it. And 6, they lightning strike him in his grave to bring him back. So it's like a zombified Jason that is killing people. And it is... Good awesome. Lord. And I think 6 is also where they brought back Tom Savini, a great VFX horror person that did like the famous Dawn of the Dead machete chop in the head effect and stuff. So I believe he does like a lot of cool special effects in that movie. But yeah, overall I enjoy the franchise. It's a great like guilty pleasure, I guess, of just like getting in the mood for Halloween. But like I wouldn't recommend any of them, probably other than the first 2, 4, and 6. Like 3 and 5 are a slog. But
okay.
But other than,
I can't say that I am Um, well, yeah, I guess like my horror is not my genre. But it's that time of year. My kind of Halloween movies are like Hocus Pocus and like Halloween Town, like Disney. Like
I mean,
The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Me and Tasha love Halloween. It's our favorite holiday, and yeah, we love our horror movies. Like, and so with that, like we watched Trick or Treat, The Blob, Insidious. I have those on there. Black Phone. All these are great movies. If you haven't seen them, go see them. One that was a first watch that I can't highly recommend enough is Panic Room by David Fincher. Oh my God, is that movie such a great thriller of Jodie Foster being locked in a panic room while burglars, Jared Leto as a burglar, breaking into the house, and things unfold from there. It is great. It's David Fincher, like, at his best. Can't highly recommend that enough. I first watched After Sun. That broke me.
Broke you into a million pieces.
Yeah, like, that is a good movie. And then I recently went down a rabbit hole of Kevin Smith movies because that is a person that I had a huge blind spot for. So I watched all of the View Askew universe movies. Basically, Kevin Smith made the MCU before the MCU happened. So with movies like Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy, Dogma, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and so on, like, all those movies take place in the same world. And it's very interesting watching them back to back to back like that.
Connor, are all of these titles something you've watched? Like, how many days, how many like weeks are you spanning with all of these titles?
A lot of these some of these were a month ago, but with the Kevin Smith, that was just recently, like 2 weeks ago. Like, I just finished that.
So on average, how many titles do you watch like a week?
I believe letterboxd says potentially 10.
Wow.
10 or so. That's a good day.
Yeah.
That's so many.
That's a good one.
That is so many. I try to stick to 4 to 5 a week.
It slows down because I'm now playing Starfield. And so when I'm playing video games or get distracted with other stuff, it does slow down a lot.
Wow.
But other than Kevin Smith, the big one that I can't talk about is Saw. I rewatched all of the Saw movies, and then I have stuff to say about those because it is very interesting rewatching Saw in today's lens from the fact of, like, these movies are so, like, cop melodrama oriented that the only difference between Saw and, like, a CIS or NCIS or Law and Order and stuff is that with those primetime day shows, they don't show, like, how the victim got murdered. Where Saw does, and that's where, like, the torture porn type of stuff gets thrown out a lot. But I'm like, it's not as bad as people say it is, in my opinion, because I've seen a lot of horror movies. But, like, like, every Saw movie is just mainly a thriller that's just about, like, who the Jigsaw killer is. And it's kind of fascinating how the franchise just becomes, like, Fast and Furious of becoming a soap opera of itself and trying to out-twist itself each movie, that I just blown away that now watching all of the franchise again, I'm so excited for Saw X. Like, I can't wait to see.
So will you be going to the theater this week to see Saw X?
Yeah, me and Tasha are planning on it.
So
can't wait to see what bad acting and terrible twists that will happen, but we are so here for it.
So next week, Connor, you're going to be our Saw correspondent. Yeah. After you have seen Saw X, you're going to tell us what you think about it, and you can kind of talk about your relationship with the franchise, because I will not be going to see that film for any reason. And I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts.
Next week or the next 2 weeks or so, when I do see it, I'll do it, and I could probably just spoil everything for you, so you don't have to see these movies.
Well, maybe don't spoil everything because we don't want to spoil it for our
not the
audience.
new movie. I'm talking about these older movies. Saw is from 2004. Like, that is an old movie.
Oh, I know.
So, like, I think at this point, if you don't know the
SpongeBob
twist
movie
in Saw, it's kind of on your point. It's kind of the Sixth Sense twist, you know?
Oh, I definitely know about Saw. Yeah, it's not my cup of tea, but I can appreciate.
But for
where
our
people
audience,
are fans,
I watched them all. I have a Saw ranking. My Saw rankings go from top to bottom, from best to worst. It's Saw, Saw 2, Saw 6, Spiral, Saw 3, Saw 5, Jigsaw, Saw 4, and then Saw the final chapter, which was Saw 3D. So yeah.
Okay.
Those are and I stand by those.
Okay.
And I stand by it. Okay. So, Emma, what were your most recent watched?
Okay. As far as I go, like I said, I watch about. I stick to about 4 a week. I kind of have like a ritual on Fridays. I watch a film that I've never seen before that is older, so I call it First Watch Friday. And if you follow me on Instagram at CinEmma, I post what I'm watching every Friday. And so for me, on Friday of this past week, it was Big Hero 6. It was a big blind spot for me. I had never seen it before, but it was on my blind spot watch list this year. And so I really enjoyed it. So then on top of like my first watches, I like to watch at least a couple of new releases. I'm pretty up on 2023 films that are coming out. So far this year, I've watched over 50 2023 films. I try to keep up with, weekly releases. So this week's films were No One Will Save You, which was a Hulu premiere. It is a horror film, and it is an alien invasion horror starring Caitlin Dever, and that's really what drew me to the movie was Caitlin Dever. If you know anything about her, she was one of the stars of Booksmart, and I think she is quite a talent, and
she's
this
incredible.
Movie should convince you that Caitlin Dever is a really good actor. Something very unique about No One Will Save You is that there's almost no dialogue at all. And she really holds your attention with just like her facial features and her, physical acting. And, I just think she did a really good job. I think the movie is really unique, and I think that the ending, I'm not going to spoil anything, but the ending is very cool. And the other new release that I watched this week, speaking of Wes Anderson, he had a short film that premiered on Netflix yesterday. By the way, yesterday was Freddy's birthday. Happy birthday, Freddy. We're recording today on September 28th. So when I say yesterday, Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar was Wes Anderson's short film that premiered on Netflix yesterday. It is 37 minutes long, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. It is based on Roald Dahl's short story, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. On top of that, there are 3 more short films that are premiering on Netflix this week from Wes Anderson. Today was The Swan. I watched that already. Friday is, I believe, either Poison or The Ratcatcher, and then the last one is going to premiere on Saturday. And so 4 short films from Wes Anderson premiering on Netflix this week. Go watch those if you haven't. It's not like you have to really dedicate a lot of time. You can just turn it on, and it's shorter than like a half an hour episode of something that you're watching on TV. So that's really good. And I'd like to just cap off with my friend invited me to go see Searching for Sugar Man. at the Detroit Film Theater, which it didn't premiere, but it's a 2012 film documentary. It won the documentary Oscar that year. It's about a folk singer named Rodriguez who is from Detroit, and it's a very, very interesting story about basically how he was not successful in the United States, but he was incredibly successful in South Africa, and he had no idea. And it's a very interesting, cool story about essentially finding him and getting him to South Africa where people love him. So he's a very interesting, cool guy, and it was a very interesting documentary. Oh, and his family was there. He recently passed away this August, and so that's why the theater was replaying it at the DFT, and I was able to see it, and his family was in attendance, which was really heartwarming. But I just, and it's not very long. I recommend you watching it. I think it's on HBO. It's a quick watch. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Besides our big discussion, because
I will say
we watched another film together this week that we're going to talk about now.
Yeah, real quick though. I will say, Searching for Sugar Man is a great movie.
I love it.
Searching for Sugar Man.
I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, I really like the way that the story is presented throughout that. Obviously, the story is like wild and
it's almost unbelievable.
Yeah, it's that's a perfect way to put it. It's almost unbelievable, the story. And so like the way it's presented to you in the actual documentary itself, I think really amplifies that in a positive, like in a good way. It amplifies that.
It's kind of wholesome
story. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was gonna say like the Caitlin Denver stuff, like she is incredible. If Ticket to Paradise is also a good movie that she's in with George Clooney, like like she is just a powerhouse actress. Like she's slowly becoming one of my favorite actresses. She's great. And then with Big Hero 6, we kind of recommended that movie to you over text. And
you did, yes, you did. It was already on my watch list, but I did kind of reach out to you too, and I was like, okay, here's this like list of things I want to see today, and you both were like, you haven't seen Big Hero 6, you need to watch that right now. So I enjoyed it. Baymax is the cutest, most fluffiest robot that has ever existed in fictional film, and he is, I just want to hug him.
With Big Hero,
I want to also fist bump him.
Big Hero 6, it's my favorite Disney movie. Like, it's now become my favorite Disney movie. The brother storyline like really resonates with me, having a 6-year younger brother. But when that movie was coming out, I was going to college, and so it just hit like so hard with that. And then like having superheroes like a part of it too. I'm like, oh my god, like this movie's just made for me. And again, like why, like I'm just so mad that Disney hasn't made a sequel to that movie, because it's just like you have such a world that you can live in. Like
it won
it's perfect.
It won animated feature at the Oscars that year, so it was critically received well. And I was trying to say earlier, like I just want to give Baymax a fist bump so he can go.
He's so great.
Ba-la-la-la.
Hairy baby.
Yeah, hairy baby. Yeah, drunk Baymax is my favorite.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Now for the tots.
So now we're going to come to the point of the discussion, and it's called Godfather Talk.
Oh, no.
Because this group of people needs to talk about Godfather. If you don't know anything about The Godfather, which you might have been living underneath a rock, it is considered one of the greatest films of all time by several different media conglomerates. Like, let's say the American Film Institute currently has The Godfather at number 2. That I don't endorse the American Film Institute's list of the top 100 films of all time, but also Sight and Sound has it in the top 10, and there are several other big I guess, big tent people
Yeah.
that would say that Francis Ford Coppola's 1972 film, The Godfather, is the greatest film of all time, which also leads us to...
Every actor on Letterboxd that gets interviewed, it's always in their top 4. Like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But there's also a discussion about The Godfather Part 2, which is considered by a lot of people as the best sequel ever, as well as some people might say that The Godfather Part 2 is better than The Godfather, which we're going to talk about today. But both of these films were awarded heavily. Both of these films won Best Picture. And so there's a discussion to be had. So let's get started, because I saw The Godfather a long time ago. But Connor just watched The Godfather for the first time pretty recently.
Yes, I did.
And so we decided, based on our reactions, that this needs to be a podcast discussion.
So,
Yes.
I watched The Godfather because Emma's told me that The Godfather is up there with one of her favorite films. It's not in her top 4, but, like...
Not just Emma.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, like, I should
No, I
probably
also
watch
really like
this
The
movie before the podcast so that we actually have something to talk about. It was that, and Freddy has always told me about 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I've also saw for the first time recently. But with The Godfather, it has been something that has been looming over me for many years. Because anytime when you talk to people about movies, it always comes up, and I always say, no, I have not seen it. And everyone gives me the same spiel. How have you not seen The Godfather? It feels like every girlfriend that probably hasn't seen Star Wars with boyfriends that are like, you haven't seen Star Wars? Like, come on. But for me, I just don't gravitate towards gangster movies a lot. I don't really like gangster movies all that much. It's not a genre that I, particularly watch all that much. And so it's always something in my back burner of like, I'll get to it when I get to it. But because of how monumental, like Emma preferenced, this movie has been, of it being the greatest movie of all time, nothing will ever beat it. This is arguably the best movie ever. All these things. It is such a high expectation. I'm like, all right, might as well give this a watch. And yeah, I watched it and I thought it was okay. I gave it...
All right, you're going to have to defend yourself,
Here's my defense.
Sir.
I gave this movie a 5 out of 10. My defense is...
That's
and
criminal.
it seems pretty frowned upon. The thing is I...
You need to be locked up, sir.
Going into The Godfather, no one has ever explained what The Godfather is. Every time people say you have never seen The Godfather, you should watch The Godfather. And I'm like, well, why is it important? And they go, because it's The Godfather.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, that gives me nothing. And that's been the conversation for years.
Okay.
I've never met someone talk to me about why it's important, why they love it, why it's arguably the best movie ever. You hear people talk about why Lord of the Rings is the best trilogy of all time, and I understand why. Because of the fact of, like, it's Peter Jackson's, most incredible feat of cinema. It shouldn't have been, it shouldn't have worked, and it worked so well. And so with The Godfather, I just don't hear those conversations because either A, because of how old it is, those conversations have already been talked about enough, or just whatever. And so that's part of it. And then the other part is watching the movie. It kind of felt like my second defense is watching the movie kind of felt like how I felt in English class, where a teacher will say, we need to read this book because it's such a good book, but they take so long explaining why it's an important book. So when you're reading it, I struggled to read the book because I'm like, I don't get this. Like, I don't get why we have to read Shakespeare. Like, sure, he's a good guy, but like, I don't get this. Like, there's so many like modern stuff that could be, taught better, get the same lessons. So I just struggled with the movie a lot because I'm like, I think I get it, but at the same time, I just don't.
Okay. Well, you make good points. Your point about mafia films and your point about, the importance of literature compared to the importance of like classic cinema. So as a, former educator, specifically former English teacher, I can kind of speak to that a little bit. But basically, the way I look at The Godfather, I don't gravitate towards mafia films either. But the way I look at The Godfather is that it's actually not a mafia film. It's not a mob movie. It's not a gangster movie. The Godfather is a character study. And that character is Michael Corleone. And his fall from grace. And it takes a long time to get there. But the journey from the time that we first meet him at Connie's wedding, and he tells Kay about the time that Luca Brasi put a gun up to Johnny Fontaine's manager and said, either your signature or your brains will be on this contract. I made him an offer he can't refuse. And he tells Kay that for the first time. And he's sitting in his like prestige army uniform. And he says, that's my family, Kay. That's not me.
Yeah.
And that's when we meet Michael. And then he kills Captain McCluskey and Sollozzo. And then he goes to Italy. And then he comes back. And he is essentially taking the reins. He comes back after his brother dies. And he's essentially taking the reins of the family business. And, there's a lot of things we can say to like what caused him to go from that's my family, Kay, that's not me, to killing a cop and killing the leader of another family and then fleeing to Italy, which basically starts his descent into becoming the Don. But that's what makes The Godfather a masterpiece. It is done so well. Al Pacino is incredible the way that he plays it. And Marlon Brando obviously won the Oscar for this film.
Yeah.
In which he famously had a Native American woman accept the Oscar on his behalf, which I think was a pretty cool thing that he did. But I think Al Pacino is this movie, and Marlon Brando is the title character. But the point is that Michael becomes the Godfather.
Yeah.
Like that last shot of Kay asking him, did you do this? Did you kill Carlo? And he just lies to her face. And she leaves the room, and that last shot of the door closing and those people kissing his hand is like, it gives me chills just thinking about it.
Yeah, it's like a very like you're watching somebody who up to the point of the beginning of the movie has done everything in their power to not be this person that he inevitably becomes. And so like over the course of the movie you're just watching what almost feels inevitable just take place, and it's a classic.
I'm glad
it's a masterpiece for a reason.
I'm glad we're talking about it. What you said was what I needed. What I'm going to do is I wrote notes. I have a notebook that I got for the podcast, just so I can do this. So when we do our movies and our picks, I can write notes and things and talk about them. So I wrote notes. I just want to give you some of the highlights of what my thought process watching this movie was. Just starting the movie, I see like the influence that this movie has on pop culture and just in general.
Yes.
Just like I just see, and finishing the movie I feel the same way, where it's like, oh my god, like anything after The Godfather, every movie is doing The Godfather. Like any movie that I can think of that I like, it's like, oh, that has like guy who only sees The Godfather,
like this
reminds me of The Godfather.
we would not have we would not have The Sopranos if it wasn't
Also
for
something
The
I haven't
Godfather.
seen, but that is also back to I just don't care for mob stuff. But but with that, it's like something like The Dark Knight, like the rise of like seeing Harvey Dent, the fall of Harvey Dent and stuff, and like that is also going to The Long Halloween, and The Long Halloween came out after The Godfather, and it is reading The Long Halloween and now thinking back to The Long Halloween, I'm like, oh, they're just doing somewhat of The Godfather, because that whole comic is about the mobs in Gotham City. It's about Falcone and all these mobs and mobsters. And it's just like, oh my God. And so, yeah. Then I put one of the funny ones. I was like, holy shit, the wine pitchers, that's insane. Like having a beer pitcher, but just wine. I'm like, because they know they're going to drink that much. I'm like,
that's Italians.
Yeah, I'm like, that is crazy. But after a while,
I think they would take that. They would take offense to that. They would want me to say Sicilians.
But after a while, I put 40 minutes in, and I'm starting to feel, how I feel about watching these movies. It's starting to get boring, whatever. And then immediately I wrote a note. Okay, never mind. They just shot The Godfather. They brought me back in. I'm like, holy shit, where's this movie going?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, it's pretty interesting, all that kind of stuff. And then I put, I had to pause it, and I'm like, again, I'm getting bored. I had to pause it because I had to go to the bathroom. I'm like, okay, getting bored. Again, note next. Holy shit, they just blew up that girl.
Apollonia.
Yeah.
Come on.
So every time I felt like where's this movie go? Like they're taking so long. Something would happen. Something big would happen. We're like, whoa, where's this movie going? So then then I put the Las Vegas scene was awesome.
Yeah.
Like that whole sequence was cool. But then at the end I wrote what I kind of said, where it's like I'm kind of like I think the movie is average. I don't think it's as much of a masterpiece. It kind of had a huge mountain to get over for me, but I did write in my notes, I'm like, if someone like Emma or just people explain it to me, I can't see this getting more stars after another rewatch and stuff, and going into the movie with that context.
I think you should.
And
I think you should maybe give it another watch with the lens of looking at it as a character introspective instead of like, oh, it's just the mafia killing each other.
Because again, with how people, with how people talk about it and stuff, I'm like, okay, whatever. I did get that by the end. I did understand. I'm like, oh, this is just Al Pacino rising to power, which is cool, and it does make me excited to see what part 2 is, and stuff.
Right. That's a great segue for us, Connor, because Freddie and I just recently watched The Godfather Part 2 for the first time with my husband Cameron. We've been wanting to watch The Godfather Part 2 for a long time. The Godfather is actually something that my husband and I have in common in terms of, well, actually, he was the one that got me to actually read the Mario Puzo book, which the movie is based on, and the book is incredible. There's a lot of things in the book that aren't in the film. But then, you watch the film, and it's just meticulous. It is so purposeful and well made. So anyway, we both love The Godfather so much, but we've been really holding out on part 2 for a long time because we're like, oh, we've heard so many good things about it. We've heard oh, it's better than part 1, things like that. So anyway, we watched it for the first time this week, and I don't know, Freddie, do you think it surpasses the first one?
It's honestly, it's kind of hard for me to say, because I'll be honest, it has been a while since I've seen the first Godfather movie. So I feel like there's parts of it that I don't necessarily remember in order to say, this is a direct, comparison. But we
won't spoil too much since I don't think Connor's seen it.
Also,
I will say it is definitely on. I will say it is definitely on the same level as the first one as far as production goes and engagement with the story. It doesn't feel like everything that unfolds feels natural compared to the story of the first one. It doesn't feel like they're necessarily.
I just want a preference too.
Force anything to up the ante.
I just wanted a preference too that I bought the Blu-ray copies of The Godfather, the one that comes in a pack. It only comes with The Godfather part 1 and part 2 restoration, like the Francis Ford Coppola restoration, and then part 3. It just says part 3. And I know out there's the Coda. I think it's called like Godfather Coda, which is part 3, which I think is another recut of the movie. Yeah. So like, I know there's many like cuts of this movie, just like Francis Ford Coppola loves to do, like Apocalypse Now and stuff. Yeah. But
I can't say that we're gonna be watching part 3 anytime soon, just because I know I'm just of people's opinions about it.
I just don't know if there's any other cuts of part 1 and part 2 out there. That's what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, I'm not really sure either. But as somebody who, I guess the most recent time that I've seen The Godfather was about a year ago, because I show it. It was part of my curriculum in my film study class.
And I should have joined.
And I've watched it several times, so I have a good idea. But I don't think, from what I can tell, I don't think part 2 surpasses part 1 for me. I think it's a great sequel. I think it's a great continuation of Michael's story mixed with kind of like a prequel of Vito's story, starring Robert De Niro. And I thought Robert De Niro did a great job. But I'm not sure if maybe it's trying to tell 2 stories at once, and it maybe should have either just been a Vito origin story or just been a continuation of Godfather Part 2, because it just feels a little like I was engaged, I was interested because I love those characters, but like I thought it was a fantastic sequel, but I don't think it's better than the first.
I think arguably I'm wondering if a lot of the people that do say that it overtakes the first one are people that are, one, just really big fans of the story in general. So then it's almost like they feel like they're getting more story because they are getting these 2 stories, like a sequel and a prequel at the same time. But like objectively, like from a filmmaking standpoint, it's that is a lot more to juggle than what you're doing in the first one, and so it's harder to execute that like to the level that the first movie's executed in. So I'm thinking that might be where a lot of the people that say it actually surpasses the first one. I think it's great, but I don't know if it necessarily.
To its credit, I think it balances the 2 storylines. And they really, like, the editing is really well. Like, whatever's happening in Michael's story, they kind of parallel it with what's happening in Vito's story.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think that part is interesting. The Godfather.
Or do you think, like, a follow-up question to that, do you think that people are also saying that it's the best sequel because from the other conversations that people gave to me about The Godfather, that's always been, like, somewhat of a comeback, is that everyone says, oh, it's The Godfather, part 1, part 2, but they brush aside 3. It always seems 3 is the black sheep and is not, like, the best, like, movie. And do you think that it's because people watch 3 and they're like, oh, that one's bad, so I actually like 2 a lot more than that?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what people's opinions are then, because this was in the 70s.
Because I feel like that's the same thing with The Dark Knight. Like, I love the Dark Knight trilogy. It's one of my favorite trilogies. But I do see people's complaints about The Dark Knight Rises, and hence why, like, I think a lot of people like The Dark Knight a lot more, and especially more than Batman Begins. So it's just what.
I'm a Rises girly.
So am I, but it's just like I can see the arguments of why people are sour on that movie, and then just because they're sour on that movie and they just watched The Dark Knight, they're like, well, The Dark Knight's the masterpiece. Yeah. So it's an interesting conversation versus like again like something like Lord of the Rings, where like it feels like Two Towers is always left out of the conversation of what's the best movie, because either people like Fellowship or Return of the King. Those are always those conversations.
No, I like Two Towers the most. I feel like I'm always like a contradictory person, but
if you're listening to this and you're a Godfather Part 2 stan, let us know.
Yeah, let us know. We'd like to hear your comments, because we're not really sure why people put it above Godfather. So I think that can wrap up our Godfather talk. I think that was great. We're gonna wrap up.
Yeah.
And talk about our upcoming episodes. So we're gonna get into October pretty soon. We're recording this, and it is September 28th. So if you're listening to this and it's already October, welcome to spooky season.
Woo!
Spooky time.
It is spooky time.
Best time of the year.
So our monthly theme for October, the next 3 weeks, we're going to be watching spooky movies. And we're going to start with Connor's pick, and then Freddy's will be in a couple weeks, and then my pick will be in a couple of weeks. And then we will wrap up the end of October with a discussion of all 3 of our films and how they can make a good triple feature, what themes are connected between the 3 of them, and yeah. So Connor, let us know what your pick is. What should you be watching this week in preparation for our next episode?
My pick for a spooky movie is that there's a bunch that I love and things, but this one I recently picked up on physical media, and it's been a minute since I've seen it, and it's 2008's Cloverfield. I picked up the 4K steelbook of it, the Lionsgate steelbook, which is gorgeous, and I can't wait to watch it in 4K. But just rewatch a movie that I love. I love the found footage subgenre in horror, and Cloverfield has just always been a movie that I go back to every once in a while, because I always forget, because I'm always watching either Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street and all these other classics, or Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School. But with it, it's like, yeah, Cloverfield is great. It's directed by Matt Reeves, who did the Batman and the latter half of the Planet of the Apes movies. Produced by J.J. Abrams. And yeah, it should be a great conversation.
Next week, we're going to hear all about it. We're looking forward to talking about it. If you are going to be watching along with us, make sure you watch along before, I guess, the next time that we will be posting our episode, but we'll be recording this time next week. So watch it and be ready to listen. And that's the end of our podcast. I hope that you've enjoyed listening. Stick with us. We're just getting started.
Thank you. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.